resistance. There also were the biological realities that came with living in close quarters in a dense settlement amidst marshes. It seems that the town had a high death rate. There are many burials of children and youth, and fairly few of older people. So the town, it seems, as far as we can see at this point, had very few deaths from violence, but a great deal more from infections and diseases like malaria, which also, of course, festers in marshlands. Now, as for their society or social structure, it had no apparent power centers or gathering places, as far as anyone has found. And instead, there's a remarkable uniformity, with houses laid out all the same in similar configurations and similar size, which suggests then an egalitarian society and a great deal of social conformity. Mellaart and his team did distinguish the houses into different categories, though. So they observed that some houses in this southwestern quadrant that they excavated, some houses were especially richly decorated and had especially large numbers of burials. And they dubbed these buildings shrines, and they theorized that they were places of special spiritual power and importance, and probably they were occupied by shamans or other spiritual specialists. They found that in this excavated area, about 1/3 of the buildings were what they called shrines. And hence, because this is such a large proportion, they supposed that they must be digging in a priestly or shamanic quarter of the city, where these shrines were especially concentrated, and they theorized that in other neighborhoods they might find houses dedicated to other pursuits or occupations like toolmakers, potters, etc. Now, as for the belief system, what would they have been teaching or practicing in these so-called shrines? Well, they made inferences based on the artworks that they found in Çatalhöyük. So artworks were a major focus and priority of the dig under James Mellaart, especially wall art. So they placed a great priority on cleaning out houses, exposing the wall murals, and then cutting them out and protecting them with resin and other materials to then transport them to the museum in Konya before they blackened or crumbled from exposure to the air. Right? If they simply excavated a building, left the walls exposed, the pigments and even the plaster would oxidize, degrade, and crumble and turn black. So they developed a system to quickly peel off layers of plaster, protect them with resin, and move them to the museum. And these paintings showed many animal figures. There are images of bulls. Bull skulls and horns are also mounted on the walls and on the rims around platforms, including some small corner platforms that conceivably might be altars. There also were jaw bones and wing bones mounted on the walls or found on floors. And they also found figurines of animals, mostly ceramic figurines, but some also carved in stone, and these include figures of bears, cows, pigs, and some that are very ambiguous and hard to identify, but might be birds. And it's unclear what these figurines were: toys, talismans, maybe clan or family emblems. And also there were human figures in the art. So some of these are small painted figures that one sees in scenes of hunting or dancing. They most often are male figures wearing garments around the waist made from leopard skins. In some houses, of course, there were human bones which had been picked out and artistically displayed, much like with the animal bones and skulls. So they can be seen as a kind of decorative art too. And there also were a number of skulls, which it seems were intentionally removed and saved from skeletal remains, and then were displayed in wall alcoves or niches. And some wall sculptures were also found, which it seems combined human and animal elements. For instance, some houses had round, protruding wall sculptures resembling female breasts, but with the beaks of vultures embedded inside them and emerging at the nipple. And Mellaart and his team theorized that these sculptures seemed to represent a kind of combining of life and death. right? The life-giving breast and teat juxtaposed with the beak of the vulture, which feeds upon the bodies of the dead. And this arguably echoes then images in the wall paintings where one sometimes sees vultures swooping down towards human figures as if possibly feeding upon dead bodies. So the archaeologists theorized that people might have laid out and exposed their dead to be fed upon and picked clean by vultures before then interring the bones in their dwellings. So it seems all of this suggests maybe a possible kind of death cult or a belief system or religion involving a cycle of life and death, fertility and death. But the most famous artworks by far that Mellaart and his team uncovered at Çatalhöyük were human figurines. And most of these, it seems, were also sculpted from clay in fairly crude styles. Most of them are too simple and vague to distinguish the sex, and with some of them it's even hard to tell whether they're human or animal or part human, part animal. But there are others, maybe a dozen or so, that were somewhat larger, more detailed, more well finished. They were also hand sculpted from clay and some carved in soft stone. And a small portion of these are even larger, over 6 inches, and I think can fairly be called statuettes. And these statuettes all show ladies either standing or seated in relaxed poses. They are large, full-figured with mature bodies, round bellies and thighs, and large pendulous breasts. These parts of the body, right, like the